Welcome back to Pocket Figures, where today I'm going to be unboxing the Hasbro style Nick Aldis figure released by Chella Toys. This figure's been around for a while now, and I wasn't really fussed for it to start with. When it first started to appear online and people started to talk about it, and you saw people picking the figure up, I thought, I'm not too bothered about this. It seemed to me at the time like it was just a small company, because Chella Toys are not a company I've ever heard of before they started doing these figures. And it seemed like they were almost just mass producing, I suppose a limited amount. I think there's only 2,000 of these figures out here, out in the wild. But they were just kind of mass producing custom Hasbros. That's kind of my first perception of it was it was just somebody who was good at customs, who was mass producing customs, and I thought, well, that's maybe not really something that I'm interested in. But then things started to grow and develop, and Chella Toys, as this kind of gained a bit more exposure, people started to talk about it. More people started to question it and sort of really explore it. And almost by default, I just started picking up little bits of information here and there. And then I found out that this isn't just a custom Nick Aldis figure. This is the start of a line of retro wrestling figures that Chella are producing. So Nick Aldis is the first figure that they've released, and to date, it's the only figure that they have actually released. They're actually taking pre-orders for some other figures, but at the moment, Nick Aldis is the only one that you can physically get there. Now, if you turn the pack around, it will show you that one of the figures that they're taking pre-orders for are the Mind of the Meanie 2-pack. So that's like a tag team set with the Blue Meanie, who everybody sort of knows and everyone's got fond memories of from his time in ECW and WWF, WWE as well. But he's involved in a podcast, as so many ex-professional wrestlers are now. He's involved in a podcast called Mind of the Meanie. And the host of the podcast is the guy that he's in this 2-pack with. It's Josh Chernoff, I think his name is. Yeah, and they are going to be released as a tag team set pretty soon. I think it's summer 2021. If you go to the Chella Toys website, you can get the pre-order, so you can put an order in. So when I saw the Blue Meanie, I mean, I'd never heard of Josh Chernoff before, so I'm not too bothered about him. But when I heard Blue Meanie, I thought, yeah, that's not a bad. It's not one you ever really see many customs of, but you think, I mean, that would be a cool fig, and it would look pretty decent in your Hasbro collection. So I started getting a little bit more interested, and then they announced that there was another wrestler that were making a figure of, which was a guy called Ethan Page. And I've never heard of Ethan Page, but apparently he's a fairly big deal in the independent wrestling circuit. I think he's Canadian. He's obviously North American independent wrestling circuit. But from what I understand, he is a relatively big deal. So there will be some kind of demand for that figure within the sort of hardcore wrestling fans, the smart marks, if you like, that know their way around indie wrestling. So still, I thought, yeah, maybe I'm kind of liking the Blue Meanie side of things. I mean, Nick Aldis as a wrestler, as a personality, I think he's a decent wrestler. And yeah, I mean, to pick up his retro or his Hasbro equivalent isn't a bad thing. But there was nothing that was getting me really excited. But what then happened just recently was that they announced, I think it was on Instagram originally, Chilla Toys announced that they had agreed a deal. I don't know how it works with the licensing or the likeness rights for these wrestlers or these personalities, but they agreed a deal to produce a Tom Billington, a Dynamite Kid figure. Now, Dynamite Kid is obviously the other half of the British Bulldogs, as well as Davey Boy Smith, and he is one of the most commonly customed Hasbro figures because it's one that you almost need. in your Hasbro collection, because British Bulldog is such a cool figure. But from that era of wrestling, late 80s, early 90s, British Bulldogs are massive, and everybody likes the thought of having a British Bulldogs tag team. So Tom Billington being produced as in this retro form, that does get me excited for this thing, and that does make me think, yeah, I would quite like to have that. And then obviously, if you're going to have the Dynamite Kid, you have to kind of go back through the line. So I'm now thinking about, I haven't pre-ordered the other two. I haven't pre-ordered the Mind and the Meanie, and I haven't pre-ordered Ethan Page. But I'm thinking I might, just so that I've got everything in place by the time that Dynamite Kid comes out, because I don't want to have to go back when they're all sold out and then try and pay crazy prices on eBay or something. So I might go and pre-order them. But Nick Aldis, the sort of deciding factor, if you like, with Nick Aldis, because when I saw the Dynamite Kid stuff, I thought, yeah, I'm going to get into this line. I'm going to go and see if I can get myself a Nick Aldis. You got the Chella Toys website. I think this is a touch of class. Awesome. So the full price figure, they're not that expensive anyway. They're £17 for a full price figure. But yeah, what was a touch of class is that they offer these as damaged cards. Now, to look at that, that does not look damaged at all. That looks like a near mint card. But they offer for £12, so that's a third off, more or less. They'll give you a card that isn't mint, isn't like 100% mint. And when I arrived, I expected the bubble to be hanging off or a rip in the card or something. No, the only thing wrong with this is there's a tiny little crease at the top corner. If my camera focuses on that, that's it, and that's all that constitutes it being damaged. So I got this for £12, and I thought, well, why not for £12? Obviously, my intention was to take it off the card anyway, so I don't mind what kind of state the card's in. But if it's £17, I was thinking, do I want to spend that? At £12, I thought, can't say no, can you? So yeah, I have picked myself up a Nick Aldis after much deliberation, and we're going to unbox him and have a look at him, and hopefully what is the first of many Chella toy figures unboxing videos. So here comes the real world champion. It's a lot easier. That bubble came off a lot easier than the Hasbro's. It was just, there's almost like a little bit that wasn't sealed down. You can just peel back. It wasn't, you didn't really have to dig into it like you do for the Hasbro's usually. But this quite interesting. I mean, first thing I notice about Aldis is that in the bubble, it looks quite shiny. It looks like quite a kind of patent finish. The kind of shiny finish. But when you get it out, he's not at all. It's more like a matte finish. He's got like a kind of dull finish, which I think is better. I like that a bit more. Now, I assumed. No, it doesn't say anything about a move. I'm just looking at because this is where the WWF Hasbro's have their move example, and I just assumed that was. I didn't really look at it close enough, but I assumed that was his move. He doesn't have a move though. No, it does. The Kingsland Cloverleaf. It's not a move. There's no action in there. He just has points of articulation. So there's nothing that spring loaded or anything like that. There's no action. It would lead you to believe that there is, because it does say the front Kingsland Cloverleaf, and then in the back it's got the instructions. But more or less, all you're doing is just moving his arm up and down. There are no, there's no action in there. But that's a decent attempt. I mean, that's better than a custom. It's not just a custom, because that is a pretty high spec finish. The details on the trunks and everything. I mean, I didn't realise that in the packet, obviously, but he's got the dealer across the back of his tights, and he's got these Ace of Spades symbols on the front of his tights and his knee pads and stuff. That's pretty cool. It's pretty detailed. You can kind of tell, like, these little stripes here. I don't know if that's meant to be socks or if it's his knee pads or what have you, but that's free-handed. You could tell that's not really going on by machine, because it looks a little bit messy. But the details are pretty decent. I think I quite like the details. I'm impressed by that. I didn't expect to be that level of detail. So yeah, that's a reasonable figure for 12 quid. I think it's a pretty good figure. Actually, yeah, his head is pretty decent as well. The sculpt for his hair is fairly accurate because he has the kind of Peaky Blinders, no hair at all on the sides, like 0.5 on the sides, and then it's still swept over at the top. And he does have a very similar, and that's known affectionately in my friendship groups as a third division haircut. Guys that are trying to look cooler than they actually are. But yeah, that's what Aldis is rocking like in real life. So that's a fairly decent sculpt of that haircut. Um, but yeah, overall, that's not a bad fig. I'm happy with that. I think that's for what I've paid for it and what it is. I think that is a pretty decent figure. I'm not hugely knowledgeable even about Nick Aldis. He My first sort of exposure to him was when he was on the Gladiators, the sort of reboot of Gladiators on Sky One years ago, like about 10 or 15 years ago now. But then obviously made his way to Impact Wrestling, TNA, and I think he sort of made his name in Japan. I think it's when he went to Japan that he became really well known. And since Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins bought the NWA brand, I think Nick Aldis has been more or less the flagship of that brand. He's been the main man in NWA. He obviously dropped the NWA title to Cody Rhodes on the All In card, but he won it back, and I think he's still, to the best of my knowledge, actually, he still is the NWA champion. And I think it's probably about as big a deal as you can be as a wrestler and not be in WWE or I suppose AEW at the moment, but I think he's probably as well known and as important to professional wrestling as you can be without being in one of the major companies. But yeah, as I say, I'm not like a huge Nick Aldis fan or a massive expert on him or anything. But that said, I'm happy to have his figure. I think it's a reasonable addition to the collection. And other than the fact that it doesn't have an action move, I mean, I don't feel let down or disappointed. I think that's a pretty decent effort from Chella Toys. And if that is the kind of standard that they're setting, the Blue Meanie one, I'd like to see what Blue Meanie looks like. I'd like to get Blue Meanie just out of curiosity, really. The other two, Chernoff and Page, I'm not really bothered. I didn't know who they were before this toy line was announced, so I'm not too bothered about them. But I would like to get Blue Meanie, and I really want a Dynamite Kid. Really want a Dynamite Kid. So I'm going to continue to follow this toy line and this figure line and see how far it goes and how interesting it gets. So I'll probably do some update videos in future. And I've also heard that there Zombie Sailor, who is somebody who's again sort of social media famous, he is producing a variant line, or I don't know, a competitive variant's not the right word, but an alternate line of these retro figures as well. And that's got some big names already signed up. I forget everybody that he was talking about making, but I believe Bruiser Brody was one of the figures that Zombie Sailor was going to be making. And there's another guy who we really needed as a Hasbro. I mean, he was never in the WWF to that extent, but just from that era of wrestling, iconic figure, and to have him as a Hasbro would be awesome. So that's something that I don't have a great deal of information about at the moment, but I'll certainly be looking out for info on, because I'll want to pick up the figures that Zombie Sailor's making as well. But for now, happy with my Nick Aldis, happy to have him, and looking forward to picking up the future releases from Chella Toys. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, stay safe, and we'll speak soon.